Valeriya Voronova is a writer, actor, and director based in New York City. She studied at the Institute for Performing Arts in Moscow, concentrating on acting, stage speech, choir, stage combat, and fencing. She left prematurely after receiving a scholarship for the Institute for American Musical Theater in New York, which focused primarily on musical theater. Once in New York, Valeriya furthered her acting studies with Pamela Scott and Jeff Passero and did multiple musical theater intensives, including Broadway Dreams and Actors Therapy. Also involved in voiceover, she voiced a Russian character in the video game for World War Z and narrates for animation and documentaries. Valeriya eventually became involved in immersive theater, a strong passion, while still maintaining survival jobs during the pandemic. She has had to lie about being sick in order to make it to rehearsals an outrageous number of times. Call Us Villains is Valeriya's directorial debut, based on her book Before You Call Us Villains, which she worked on for 9 years and is finally in the editing stages. You can find out more about Valeriya by visiting her Instagram, at Valeriya Voronova, that's at VALERIE VORONOVA. Welcome, Valeriya.
Hi.
When did art enter your life?
I love this question. Very early on, at least according to my parents, I was singing before I was talking. But officially, I'd say my mom took me to see Cats when I was 8 years old. And before that, I've heard, these big musical numbers in Disney movies and in some anime as well. And I always felt very attracted to that genre, that particular style. So as a child, I was trying to navigate what is this genre exactly? Because musical theater was not very, I guess, there wasn't a lot of musical theater in Russia. We get one big replica show every year, maybe two, and then there's a lot of original musicals, but the levels are very different depending on the production. So coming to see Cats and an official replica that was, approved by Andrew Lloyd Webber, brought to us by Stage Entertainment, which is a Dutch company, I believe, and they make sure that, Paris, Netherlands, Germany, all of these countries get the replica shows. Seeing Cats was absolutely crazy. I think I pretended to be a cat for at least one more month, even eating cat's food occasionally, thinking that maybe it will help me to become a cat. It did not help. And in addition to that, of course, they were doing all of these paintings on children's faces in the main hall of the theater to make them look like cats. And my parents really had to force hard face washing routine on me to get rid of that because I did not want to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Did you say that you were singing before you were talking?
I think so, yeah. And, it's kind of funny, but in my apartment in Moscow, I have so many little cassettes because my parents got me a little voice recording device very early on that was running on cassettes or VHS. Is that the same as like the TV cassette or no?
No. You were probably on either a micro cassette recorder.
Micro cassette, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's at least 20 of them where I'm narrating some really weird bullshit, probably some fairy tales that I came up with, or I'm singing and listening to it now, basically due to the cassettes aging. And because I was probably 5 or 6 years old, when you're listening to it, it feels like a munchkin, just, such a high-pitched voice. And a lot of really fascinating and weird things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how that stuff when we're kids, I do a lot of these artist interviews and we all kind of, not all of us, but a lot of us have that that young childhood, and a lot of it depends on your age. But when I was a kid, when I was 8, 9, something like that, my friend and we had a cassette recorder, and cassettes were the thing. Like we moved on from records, and you could have this little thing. And I remember being at the school, at recess, and Michael Jackson's Thriller album was out. Everybody was obsessed with Michael Jackson. And so there were these two girls, they brought their cassette recorder to school, and we had it at recess. We could listen to music at recess. And they're like skipping around dancing and singing to Michael Jackson, and we're all just, this is amazing. It's the future. And yeah, but my friend and I, we were sitting in my room one day and just said, we should just do a show. What should we call it? I don't know. And we made up a name, it had nothing to do with what we were doing, but it was like, let's just call it like the Weird Al Zone. Okay. So we did the Weird Al Zone. It had nothing to do with Twilight Zone or Weird Al. It was
Yeah,
just we
yeah.
came up with. But like, you know, so many of us as young kids, when this is like the art is coming out and it's of course not refined, but it's just kind of like finding its way out in these rudimentary, bizarre
No,
ways.
100%. No, you can see it in so many different kids and in so many different ways, like kids singing, kids dancing, drawing. You would always notice, kids who like just coloring, like art that is already ready for them, and then kids who are trying to actually draw something. It's a lot of different things.
The art needs to come out, and however that is when you're 5 or 8 or whatever is how it's coming out. And so for you, it entered your life with singing and with cats before doing the graphic novel or manga type things.
So I think that I was also always drawing all through like kindergarten and elementary school. And I was always writing, which funny enough, the writing as a skill came into my life when I was reading something and I just said to myself, I want to retype this book on my computer. And I started using computer very early at like maybe 3 or 4 years old. I was already playing quests and video games. So I was introduced to Word and I was so fascinated. I was like, oh, letters appear when I type. So I chose a book, which was Cat's Warrior, Volume 1. And I managed to retype this whole thing on my computer, which I think also helped me a lot with just writing skills like Russian language. Basically, for second grade, we figured out that I have very good understanding of grammatics without learning any rules in my own language. Obviously, it's not the same in English, but yeah, I think it was kind of connected to that. And it later on became a habit of offering to people in my class. I would come up to them because they know that I write or come up with really fun stories. And I would say, okay, do you want me to write a story about you? They're like, yes. And then we discuss what are they obsessed with at the moment. Like, for example, she wants to be a princess in, I don't know, medieval Japan. And I'm like, I got you, girl. And then, a 40-page short story appears and she's the main character and we come up with a love interest. And I kept doing that for myself and for a lot of friends. I think partially it was definitely crowd pleasing because I did not have a good experience in elementary school. I think that was my way of maintaining friendships, kind of basic survival skill, but it was also made for pleasure. And a lot of times these things are connected. So, yeah.
And I'm sorry, you referenced cats again? There was a
Cat, Warrior Cats.
Yeah,
That's a
what is that?
Oh, it's like a fantasy series for kids about talking cats who live in the wild, and kind of very similar to how Harry Potter has different faculties in the school. They kind of have different clans, and cats have wars between each other, and they have love, and they have all of the things that you would see in big, huge, epic fantasy novels for adults, but it's just cats and it's for kids.
Is it extremely common and popular and I'm just out of the loop?
I think it is kind of popular, yeah. And people here in America and in UK had been for a very long time asking for an animation or some type of adaptation because there's a graphic novel and there's books. But yeah, I want to say it's been kind of popular and similar to Nancy Drew by Caroline Kin. It's not written by one person, but it's all under the same name. Like maybe different people are actually writing the books, but Nancy Drew is Caroline Keene, and Warrior Cats are Aaron Hunter, I think, is the name for a bunch of different authors.
So how old were you when you were getting into that in Word?
Probably all of this simultaneously occurred when I was 8 to like 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now I have to ask, do you have a cat?
I used to have a bunch of cats in Moscow, and some of them are still there. I think we always had at least one, but more like two was a standard. Growing up, we had dogs as well. It's just, when I moved here, I cannot take them with me, and it's difficult because sometimes, you age, your cats age, they don't age the same way that you age. So definitely some cats passed away while I was here, but it's some type of a weird responsibility, and that's definitely a little bit of a different topic, more connected to immigrants' life, some things that you have to just accept as the facts.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of who you are. So anything you want to discuss about emigrating changes is definitely, feel free. But maybe, I don't know if past lives, if reincarnation is a thing, but if it is, you
I was a
must have been a
cat.
feline. It's, at some point. Um, it seems to
Yeah,
be a
maybe.
recurring theme in your life. When I started acting in New York, and I was officially like an actor. I didn't do anything else. I um I kind of thought, okay, I went from doing community theater and university films, um, and now, I'm in the professional world of acting. So we're all the same, right? I get to be with people. No, we're not. And we're all extremely different. We come from every different walk of life. The thing that we have in common, though, is this one thing that supersedes everything else in our lives in terms of importance. And if I'm not expressing myself, I feel like I'm suffocating. And that's a bit of an
Hmm.
exaggeration, but not really. It's I must express. And I think that that's the one thing that we all really have in common.
I also feel like for different people, it's different because if you happen to have a normal life, but you love arts, normal life tends to kind of it drags you in, and people who have sparks of imagination, who have inspiration in certain points of the day, are not always capable of, just leaving everything what they're doing and just sitting down to write or to sing or to dance. So I think it's suffocating. The thing about having survival jobs and regular life is that you have to learn how to balance between, being a responsible adult and not allowing yourself to suffocate, because the life will try to suffocate you.
Like, when did that start for you? Was it when you came to New York that you started having to balance those two worlds?
Absolutely, because many people in Russia have to move cities to study, theater. Um, a lot of people moved to Moscow, but I was already in Moscow. So because I was living at my parents' place, I didn't have to simultaneously work as I was studying. But I think just for fun, I did try to pick up like a kids entertaining gig when I was on the second year. It was very difficult because the hours for theater universities in Russia are very different from what you have here. Usually it would mean that you are studying Monday through Saturday, including Saturday. Sometimes you'll get called in on Sunday, and you're there from 9 a.m., maybe 8:30 a.m. if they want to put fencing or like something like body involved first. And you're there until 10 p.m. every day. So you are there for a very, very long time. It's at least 5 hours of acting. So adding a job on top of that was not a very smart idea. It's not like my family told me, you gotta work, like to basically to eat something, you gotta work. That was not the case. I think I did it because it bothered me that I'm 18 or 19 and I haven't worked yet, because I knew some people who did. So I worked and I was like, ooh, that's hard. I got burnt out completely because that work was also from like 9 a.m. until 11 p.m. Basically, I didn't have any time for myself. So I think I had a sip of that balancing. It didn't work on the first try. And I think at some point I was thinking that I did something wrong because I got burnt out. But looking at it, looking back at it, I feel like that's an experience that kind of everybody goes through. just so that you can navigate how far can you push your body and what's healthy and what's unhealthy in that region. But being here, definitely, especially during my first years, it was a lot of different jobs because I was just starting in restaurant industry and not all places bring you big money. I was babysitting. I was having some English tutoring on the side for Russian people. It was a lot of things. It's just kind of trying everything you can, because at that point I was not able to book any gigs with the documents that I had. I feel like they would have a lot of places actually, they want to see like a green card or something else. They want to make sure that you're not going to disappear in a month. So I think that there was that, and our school, like many other theater schools, were kind of saying, hey, you can audition if you want to, get a permission first, but we would much prefer you to wait until you graduate so that we know we gave you everything that we could. So that's kind of how it worked. For first 2 years, mostly, I was just working survival jobs, and it's really the pandemic that got me theater gigs, and everything coming, everything from that on was me booking immersive shows and lying about going to a dentist. I don't know. I feel like my managers think that my entire mouth is full of like fillings, and I removed some. People don't have as many wisdom teeth as I do, according to my managers. But you do what you got to do.
Can you talk about what your earliest memories were of life as that transitioned into, you becoming someone who was interested in the graphic novel, manga type stuff, and cats, etc.?
Just small little moments like this where you're a child, you love the sun, you look at the clouds. Clouds are magical. Everything is basically magical, and I actually really miss being present like this, because I feel like with all of the gadgets that we got, and my generation, I want to say that we didn't get mobile phones until maybe being in third, fourth grade. Like if it's a very rich family, maybe somebody had it, but I got mine when I was 10 or 11. And that's a big stop on being present, unfortunately.
Generation X, we didn't have technology like we know it now. There's a real value in having my formidable years not being related to technology. And
Yeah.
and I find also, even with the younger generation, there's this draw to get technology out of the way when it's not necessary. Like younger people, frequently you'll find them reading books on the train, and you can have something tactile and not be doing this.
Love real books. I feel like that's the two things that kind of form you as a person. It's you train your imagination by reading books. Like, especially, I love the fact that there were books that were supposed to get an adaptation, but they didn't get one yet. So you open it and you're like, okay, so this person looks like this. This person looks like this. And you read the entire book, and then the movie comes out and it's completely different, and you think that your version is better. Or you're reading a book and somewhere in the middle, the author just suddenly throws like one characteristic that completely breaks everything you've created. I would remember reading books thinking that this person is blonde, 100%, no other way around. And then, I don't know, they're just brunette. And I'm like, wow, okay. But it's that, and playing imaginary games outside, pretending you're musketeers. I think these two things are very, very important, and people don't get them as much because everything is already pre-created for them.
Yeah, and so because of growing up in Russia, it sounds like, for whatever the reasons, maybe economic or just the way your parents wanted you to be raised, there wasn't the advent of technology immediately.
I think that we've been pretty much inheriting everything straight away, technology-wise. Just, maybe like 1-2 years difference. I may be wrong, but that's how it felt for me, being born in 1996. But Russian people love books. Every single family will have that one big old closet full of books. And, it might have dust from generations. It will have old leather back volumes that somebody's grandma got not even in the shop, because back in the day they didn't buy books in the shops. They had some type of subscription, and they did not know which books are coming their way. It would just be a random book, but it would be in a beautiful hardback. Is that the term for that? So we have all of these, and sometimes you're so surprised because, yes, you have Alexandre Dumas, the whole collection. Yeah, you're gonna have, I don't know, Émile Zola, who's like a famous French author. You're gonna have Victor Hugo, and sometimes very random books that you have never heard about before. And they're standalone books, but somebody got specifically that book. And all families have the same editions because everybody in Soviet Union were getting the same subscription with the same books. Honestly, people sometimes have the same closets for the books.
So literature was a really big influence on you. Did you have particular favorite authors or stories that really helped you formulate an identity?
I liked Three Musketeers growing up. I'm trying to think. I want to say that I really dived into classics when I was 10, 12, around that age. And I had a big period of Jane Austen. I really enjoyed her, which my sister did not, which was a shame because all of the stories that she would get from me were about Victorian period from now on. But yeah, now looking back at it, I enjoy her books. They're a little dry for my taste now. Just, I don't even know how to explain it. But I love Jane Austen. I really like Elizabeth Gaskell. I actually think that she's a better author than Jane Austen, and they have very similar books. I read Bronte sisters, so Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, all of this, everything connected to that time period. I even read Shirley, which is a very unknown book by, I think, Charlotte Bronte. It maybe has one movie adaptation. That's a very unlucky book because it haven't been adapted the same way that all of their other books have been. But I've been really kind of surviving on that. And I like Thomas Hardy. Yeah, we say Gardy, but it's Thomas Hardy. Love his books. I love how miserable everybody is in his books. And Victor Hugo, Les Mis, and Hunchback of Notre Dame. I kind of wish people in US knew more about the book version of that story, because the first thing that comes to mind for many people is the Disney version and some of the movies. And the book is very different. But that's kind of, I almost want to say that it's very usual for Russian people to like that particular set of authors and books. If I could choose one book that would be more popular in US, that would be Master and Margarita. Andrew Lloyd Webber wanted to make it into a musical at one point, and he gave up on the idea after a couple of years. But it's basically about a devil visiting Moscow and creating very comedic and chaotic and sometimes sad situations in people's lives. And about a woman who gets invited to a devil's ball and she has to go naked. So it's really, that book had been banned for many, many years, partially because it has chapters about Jesus. It has a lot of scenes similar to Jesus Christ Superstar. And obviously there's no God in Soviet Union. And also because it kind of laughs at a lot of things that were happening back in the day. It laughs at all of the communism and everything. It's a great book. It's a grand book. And it's a fantasy, if you really think about it.
So, for anyone else who is as ignorant as I am, you said there's no God in the Soviet Union. Would you?
I don't know if Anastasia would tell me if I'm saying bullshit, but if I'm not mistaken, people were told that they should not believe in God. Like, there's no God, there's no devil, there's nothing. There was definitely a period of life in Russia when that was a thing. And because of that, a lot of books were banned. That was a Soviet period when they didn't have God. By the time I was born, God was fully back. So we have the Orthodox, which is the same as Greek Orthodox, and churches are pretty hardcore. Even comparing it to, I visited a couple of monasteries in Greece, even knowing that we share the same religion, it was a very different picture. Like in Russia, I don't know if people know, but you have to cover your hair when you walk into a church if you're a woman, and you have to wear a skirt if you're a woman. And it's, as a child, very early on, I knew that I think, like, it's funny to say, I think I believe in God. I think I believe in God after all of these years. And as a child, I was like, oh, but I want to speak to God. Why do I have to commit to all of these rules? So the rules made me very angry. The idea of going to the church did not itself on its own. So I very early established for myself that I absolutely hate church as an establishment, but I like God. And the amount of hysterics that I had by the doors of the church, refusing to have like a skirt on or something, it's a little embarrassing, especially because Russian people are very religious, I guess, after not having God for a while. So there's been multiple different times, not in my life, not just about me, but you see somebody crying, oh, there's devil in them. Like you see somebody, I don't know, falling in church because they're suffocating because people are standing with candles in a closed room for like 3 hours. Oh, it's because, demons are inside. So people are religious like this, and I think Russian people tend to be negative. So if they see something like that, they're not going to think, oh, this girl wants to talk to God so much that she's upset by the rules. They're like, no, there's a devil involved in this. That's religion in Russia right now.
In Call Us Villains, which is your
Mhm.
current focus artistically, yes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Part of the storyline involves religion and also
yeah,
involves witchcraft. And so
yeah.
would you say that that religious or deistic undertones are part of a lot of your writing?
Mm-mm. No, I think that it's just Call Us Villains and Before You Call Us Villains as a book has a lot of different characters with different thoughts and views on the world. And Earl and everybody else in this book were created by me and Anastasia originally. And I think that Anastasia, at that time period when we were coming up with the idea, was more religious than I was. So I almost want to say that Earl's connection to church and God and all of the doubts that he has and all of the good things that he has in his memory from growing up with his dad, who is a preacher, it's all coming from Anastasia. We were just writing together on this idea. So eventually it evolved as this is his childhood. This is how he ran off to circus. But I think because mostly we came up with this world when we were 15, 16, I think it's kind of all goes back to, yes, God matters in this world, but it's more about a teenager who didn't feel accepted or welcomed at home, trying to find a different home. And that's just reflected how our lives were at the moment, because we all want to be accepted. We all want to find our community. And at that time, I think I'm pretty confident in saying for both of us, we were each other's community, and our book was us kind of being reflected through our characters in different ways.
And this is an evolving work, as you've shared. It's 9 years so far, and you still want to translate it into English.
That's the biggest goal, because with everything that happens in the book, and book is very different from the show, it cannot be published in Russia. With all of the laws against LGBTQ community and everything, there's absolutely no way to publish it at the moment. It has way too many storylines like this. And we were thinking, okay, is there a way to kind of put some censorship on it and erase some of the things? Are they really that important? Yeah, yes, they are. And these are all very different people. We don't want to write a world where everybody's heterosexual or everybody has, upright kind of like life point of view. People are different. Books are also there to reflect life. So we want to have different characters who are diverse, who have different preferences sexually, who have different preferences in life in general. And because of that, unless the government changes anytime soon, that book is not going to be on any shelves in Russia.
So, how did you? I'm guessing that the first step in getting to the point we are now
Mhm.
where you are now with Call Us Villains in New York,
Yeah.
had to do with meeting or finding out about these people that you call the Irish that are the producers?
Yeah, I worked with, so the company is called The Other Side. It's partially based in Dublin, partially based in New York City. And they've been putting on Shawshank for, I want to say they had it maybe for a couple of months before I joined, maybe 6 months. But they had the show in Dublin, maybe in London as well, as Alcatraz, which had been pretty successful. When they brought it to New York City, they had to change it up a little bit because they found out that American audience is very different from audience in UK. And I started working for them in Shawshank as an actor. And eventually, I've just been with the company for a long enough time that I saw the moment when they were thinking about bringing a second show on. And I asked our stage manager at the time if he thinks I can pitch my idea to the Irish team. And he said, yeah, I have a feeling that your idea might be better. um, and yeah, I contacted them. I knew Peter, who is one of the Other Side producers who works on Call Us Villains and on Shawshank, because he was my main point of contact. He connected me to Dahi. They both agreed that the idea is great, that it would probably work better than what they had in mind at the moment. And who knows, maybe that idea will be one of their next shows as well. But that at that time, we decided that we're going to develop it. And I invited Anastasia to be on the first calls from day one. And it's interesting because at first, I think we were not sure if that's going to go anywhere. As with everything in life, as an actor mostly, that people say a lot of things, but people don't always do things. People can say, yeah, I'm interested in your work, and contact me, I will introduce you to this person, and this will never happen. So I think we kept very cold heads. And then it was a very big sign of success that the Other Side company kept, scheduling calls and adding more details. And at some point, we started talking about producing the set, all of the curtains and posters. And I was like, whoa. So this is actually happening. And now we're talking about putting it up in London. And we are looking at places in London, which is another absolutely crazy thing to do. Oh, so this show is now going to travel. I will need some type of a contract so that people don't change it up a little too much when I'm not present. Like, all of these things. A year ago, if somebody told me I would have a show in New York City, I would not really believe it. It's very cheesy to say it, even saying it out loud. It's just a phrase that's used so much, like a year from now. But it's true.
But it's true. Yeah.
It's true.
There's a reason why things become, you know, memes and turn of phrases is because there's truth there. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
God bless it. I mean, I'm so happy for you. Like I've told you this before. Like we only know each other so long, but I'm so
Yeah.
just so proud of you. Like it's great what you are accomplishing.
Thank you. And it's interesting. It's an interesting journey, whatever you're doing, whether you're a director, actor, or a painter, anything in arts, it involves so much of pushing yourself, kind of being your best support, because some people don't have approving parents. I have approving parents, but also our parents are not us. That's actually, when you were asking, oh, is God a big subject in my works? Parents and relationship with parents is a very big subject in my work, because I feel like there's so much psychology that goes into it. Marguerite's mother in the show, we don't touch much on it for the time's sake, but she's a pretty crazy and abusive person. And at some point in my life, I've been really sick of the mindset of saying that, we have to forgive absolutely everybody and that adults are always right. And it's not true. And especially in Russia, people grow up with so many negative, if I can say negative affirmations, basically just put in their heads that they have to see therapists to undo all of the things that their parents told them. Things that our parents tell us about money, like, for example, only bad people are rich, meaning that, like all of the rich people got their money in a dirty way. That's a negative viewpoint that a child will hear, and it prevents them from making as much money as they can, because if you were to make a lot of money, it upsets mom and dad, and suddenly you're a dirty and bad villain. So a lot of these things, that's what I definitely visit in my work. But what I wanted to say is that some people happen to have very supportive parents. Some people have parents who don't understand the industry. They want to be supportive, but they don't understand that. I saw a comment very recently when somebody said, my dad came up to me after my show, and the girl was in Wicked or a different Broadway show. And he said, so what show are you signing up for next? As if there's a database where you just, okay, I think it's time for me to be Christine on Broadway. I'm signing up to do it in July. And I have a friend who's a Russian immigrant, and I'm so, so, so proud of her. Like, she's like my sister. I love her so much. And she booked a promo with Amazon. Oh, actually, can I talk about it? I'm just going to say a promo with Amazon. Nobody would know what this is about. Haha. But it's a very big deal for immigrants. Like, who is creating work for you? And she told her mom about it. And her mom told her, this is amazing, but can you imagine if you were in Russia right now, or if you were in Russia, you would have a huge career by 25. So, that's the response. And we all know that it's coming from a positive intent, but it's extremely toxic. This is why I like exploring kind of like parents-children relationships in my work. And this is why, just being your own biggest support is so important, because when things are going to start happening for you, A, people are not even going to understand how much you went through. B, people are not going to understand how much you went through.
So you get together with the other side, you start to develop it, you decide to stage it, you have auditions. I'm sure that, I mean, I know that now you have multiple actors playing the same role depending on schedules and the dates. For people that haven't seen the show, like in these characters, who were you trying to create? And then also, if the first cast compared to now, if that has that at all changed the structure or maybe the tone of the story?
I think that all the characters obviously are archetypes. Marguerite, for the show's sake, kind of like, that virgin who explores the world. It's, somebody who lost the biggest hero that she had in her life. She doesn't really know the world without him. And for her, it's navigating that, you also have you. You can continue living. It's all right. You just need to make sure that you know what you stand for. So that's probably what we were looking for in Marguerite. And Earl is that Javert-like character, which is an archetype of his own. You'll see so many different shows and books that have characters like this. Make him, in the book, Marguerite and him and Hugo are actually in a polyamorous relationship by the end of the book. And it's not something that we were able to address on the show, because it would take a very long storyline to even explain how this happens. So in the show, he's not very capable of love, but I feel like he used to. At this point, his heart is just very cold and in chains, but he's still trying to make sure that people don't hurt the same way that he had been hurt. So I think in that way, while he is our antagonist, he has his own ideas, and in a way, he almost tries to help Marguerite at one point, but his beliefs are stronger than his empathy. I think that's something that he just taught himself to do. It's like having a hard skin. Yeah, and then Hugo is like always everybody's favorite. whether it's a book, whether anybody sees an art of Hugo, and I have a couple of illustrations that were made specifically for the book, everybody immediately notices him. And he's that archetype of like a Joker type of character. I think that in the perfect world, I would have loved him being a little more eccentric in the show. But eventually he became, we discussed, the other side company and I, how people need to understand who they're rooting for. And while this story is very much based on the gray area between black and white, they still thought that for audience members, it would be important to know that they're rooting for Marguerite and for Hugo. So I think Hugo became a little more innocent in this version. In the book, 100%, it's a person who runs a nightclub, like similar to Prosperity. He sells potions. He will sell you a potion even if he knows that it's bad for you, as long as he gets money. And yeah, he will probably sell his own mom for a really good deal. So he's that type of man. And in the book, he has a different function of learning how to love and to understand that, you know, he will be accepted for who he is. And in the show, of course, he protects his bar, but I think he's a little more lawful, and that part of him isn't as visible. Yeah.
So if you could, for people that haven't seen the show, if you could just giving like a quick summation of the story.
A daughter of a very famous magician who is missing comes to a secret speakeasy where magicians gather to find out what happened to her father. That's the shortest version of the story that I can give you. And of course, we are there as audience to help her find out what happened and to help her save the bar from possible inspection, because magic is illegal. And if somebody finds out that they're practicing, everybody's going to go to jail, everybody's going to be tortured, everybody's going to be dead.
Yeah, and so one of the actresses that plays Marguerite is with us. That's Raina Silver. So why don't we start by finding out who the hell you are, and maybe how art entered your life, and then we'll talk about you and Call Us Villains. Hi, Raina.
Hi, it's so nice to be here and to hear your story, because even though I've known you for a while now, I learned so much about you today, and that was lovely. I got into art because my parents were artists. They met doing educational theater for Kaiser Permanente, and I did my first show when I was 5. I was Gretel in The Sound of Music, and I never stopped ever. And I came out to New York City because I trained at NYU. And I fell in love with immersive theater. Actually, the day that I toured NYU, I saw Sleep No More, and I loved it. I fell in love with immersive theater, and at my time at NYU, I trained with a lot of incredible immersive theater artists, and I went to India with Theater Me Too, and I was directed by John Gold-Rubin, who is the creator of the private theater. So a lot of amazing immersive theater artists. And then my senior year, I interned with Immersive, the producers of Sleep No More. And then my professional career has been filled with immersive theater, which I feel so grateful about. I did the Netflix Stranger Things immersive show, and I did an Alice in Wonderland immersive show. And even before coming out here, I was doing immersive theater without realizing it. I was a performer at Legoland, and our shows were very interactive with the kids. And so I have a great passion for it as well. And I'm so grateful that I found my way to Call Us Villains and to you, and that I've gotten to work on this wonderful piece.
Yeah, so how did you end up in Call Us Villains? Did you do a self-tape? Did you come to an audition? What was the story there?
Yeah, so I remember exactly how I found the audition, because I have wonderful representation, so I don't always self-submit, but sometimes I do, because there are specific types of projects that I want to be in that I'm not getting auditions for. And I had just gone to London, and I saw so many amazing immersive shows in London. And I got back to New York, and I was like, man, it's been a while since I was an immersive show. I want to do it again. So I went to backstage when I typed in the keyword immersive, and Call Us Villains popped up. And I also love magic and I love the speakeasy aesthetic. And I was just thought that it was the perfect match for me. And so I applied and I got a self-tape. And that was also during one of the craziest weeks. And I honestly wasn't very confident about my self-tape because I felt like I had to rush through it. And I was like, man, that was such a great show, and I'm not going to get it 'cause I didn't have time to really do a good self-tape. But the universe smiled on me, and I'm very happy to have been cast.
Has your interpretation of Marguerite changed since then?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the show has evolved in so many beautiful ways, and I've felt very grateful that um, I've, been, I feel like so respected by you as a director, uh, uh, to have artistic visions as well, and that we have a lot of amazing conversations about the direction of the characters in the show. So I feel like there are some scenes that have changed completely, and
Yeah.
my understanding of Marguerite has just gotten deeper and deeper with every evolution.
Yeah, and part of the Marguerite character is you have to make out with everybody.
Oh,
Have
that's
you?
true. And that Hugo has been the one that I feel like has had the most actors. I feel like I've had to kiss so many different actors for this show.
Yeah,
But
she,
that also that evolved into the show that wasn't there at the beginning. And
Yeah.
the actor that I workshopped that scene with is no longer in the show. But that was a fun day too of playing around and seeing what version of the kiss we wanted and what we wanted that moment to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's clear Val you wrote. There's just so much. The show is dripping with sensuality, and I'm sure that's completely
It
intentional.
could be more. We wish it could be more. Like, yes, it's a little hidden right now, but I really hope that eventually we could have even more of that. It gotta be there. It has to be there. It's like a big thirst trap for well, young women, young men, everybody really.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a year old yet, so it's going to have
Yeah.
plenty of time to evolve. But I would say, a New York audience absolutely could. This is tame, very tame for a New York audience. And yes, Raina, you mentioned Marion. Marion does a superb job. I mean, both of you do, but I just to reference Marion, she does a superb job, and
Yeah.
and I know that you have to keep schedules in terms of like multiple shows in a day. But one of the first things I said to Val was, you need to make this, you need to let Marguerite's song be a full song. The audience would absolutely love
Mm,
it. And she's so good. And at that time, I was talking about you, Raina, but then I heard Marion, and I was clear I was talking about both of you. Like, you both
yeah.
are so musically, artistically, um, and actingly trained that you could just blow the roof off if you had the ability to time to do a full song. So yeah, like I'm sure Val's would allow you to sit in
No,
as an
we would
audience
love
member.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like at some point we also had, well, at least I, in my head, I constantly look at different options. And like in a perfect world, I guess if we had more freedom with light work at the moment, I would have loved when Marguerite brings people up and she walks into the speakeasy. Maybe the speakeasy music doesn't start straight away, but you get that kind of like eerie beginning of a song, and the Hugo is polishing something with his back to the audience, not noticing that we entered yet, and everything is blue. It's so random that I'm just discussing this right now. But and Marguerite goes like, after you've gone, like maybe two phrases, and the light changes to red, and Hugo turns as if sensing her presence, whether just actually seeing her come in. And then the scene begins with the regular speakeasy music, because it's kind of her also entering that world. And I think we don't address enough that probably every night that she comes there, she's always hoping to find an answer. And that's her moment of like, here we go again. Like that's I there's so many things that I would love to do, but we'll see if that happens eventually.
Yeah. You know, there's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. You are producing call-us villains in what could be described as less than ideal circumstances. In a perfect setting, how would you like the story to be told so that it's not in a narrow set with jail cells and and a very sketchy massage parlor next to you? What would you love to see this show look like, set scene work wise, lighting wise, in a perfect world?
I think that one of the ideas was there's a couple of actual speakeasies in town that have enough space to host the show. One of them being our neighbor, Rain's Law Room, just a couple of blocks up. I would have loved to have this space for the show. If not, like we love Johnny and the space that he provides for us. He's the owner of the bar. So, maybe doing a show there, a show here kind of situation. But the Rain Slow Room, if you ever look at their pictures, it kind of looks like our set, but it's already there. So you don't even need to bring anything except for yourself and music. They have 3 separate rooms and one long, dark, gothic looking hall. And actually, each one of these rooms already have a bar in it. So we could have had 3 bars instead of 1. But it's one option. And I was speaking to somebody the other day about how in summer, majority of shows in summer, I'm not talking Broadway, but more like off Broadway and immersive or participatory theater, they don't really do well in summer unless they are outdoor shows. I think because, why? People can be outside in the sun. So shows like this don't really sell much in summer. They sell better in fall and in winter when everybody's not on vacation and kids are back to school. But a girl told me, oh, but if it was all happening outside in kind of semi-circus setting, if it had different tents that you go in and out of, that would have worked. And that's actually a brilliant idea, but kind of goes along with the I would have loved the show to have a little more of that circus atmosphere as a little homage to Earl's past, as if all of these people are meeting right in the middle of their past and their future. Like somebody's stuck in a speakeasy forever because that's how they avoid some subjects in their life. Somebody's stuck with the thoughts of circus that have burned. So that would have been a really cool setting. And Raina will probably have more thoughts on this.
I love all of those ideas. And also from a tech standpoint, I did the sound design as well for the show.
Yeah.
And I feel like just a venue that can support a stable sound system. And also with the lighting, I love your lighting ideas and any place that you could have lighting cues, because my dad also does lighting design, so I know like what goes into it, even if I don't know anything myself about the design element. But right now, we don't really have a way to change the lights throughout the show very
Yeah.
easily. So I think it would be nice to have a venue that's just better supported for theater. And also,
Yeah.
like, just the space. I mean, I like the way that you wove in the prison setting into the show very nicely. That being said, it's definitely a different vibe than
Yeah.
perhaps we were
Yeah.
originally going for. So yeah. And I mean, we've talked about circus uh
Yeah.
type things before, but I think that would be such a fun experience as a lover of attending immersive theater as well as performing in it. That's something that I would want to go see if I heard about it.
Yeah, because then you can have an outside bar, you grab a drink, you go from tent to tent. There's like fire everywhere. It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I really like that idea, especially now that I know the story and how circus is a part of that. I thank you both for dedicating this amount of time so we can all be together and discussing the thing that we love the most, which is art.
Mhm.
And Val, it's a very short relationship so far, brief amount of time. I met you as an elf while I was a Santa.
Yeah.
And I knew that you loved singing, and you had a very present, engaging, vibrant energy about you when I was getting to know you. And then we did Instagram friend things, and I got to see, how much you really light up when you're singing. It's obviously something you were just
Thank
in
you.
love with. Yeah. And yeah, and then a failed attempt at us to go to an audition together because of situations, and then this Call Us Villains thing. I've been happy to experience, and I really look forward to seeing what you do in the future, and with any luck, being a part of it.